Welcome to this Wellness Through Mindfulness presentation. It's going to be on the topic of embracing the darkness, a mindful approach to welcoming the unwelcome. For those of you who were live at the Shaganappi Community Center, unfortunately the recording only captured the video and not the audio. So my voice was silent throughout that recording. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to record the session again. And for those of you who weren't able to make it, this is an opportunity for you to at least have some sense of what was offered and experienced that evening. The first part of this will be a meditation and a drop-in. And that's exactly where I want to start. And so giving yourself permission with intention to explore your inner world. And the inner world is one half of where we live. We live simultaneously in two worlds. The world out there that we call the world of action, where we have an identity known publicly, and where we do our work, live our relationships, explore our interests, and manifest ourselves in a certain way. The inner world is the other half. And it's a world that we often resist for many reasons. We forget that we have a rich inner world. We'd rather be distracted by the newest shiny thing. We may be attached to our identity and how we define success in the outer world. We may be captured and entranced by social media or political discourse. And so with only so much energy to invest, we often find ourselves not having explored meaningfully and with dignity our rich and diverse inner world. And as much as there is darkness in the world out there, we have division and conflict and war. We need to also know and come to terms with and figure out our relationship with the darkness that might lie within us. Because wherever there is outer, there is inner. Wherever there is day, there is night. And wherever there is darkness, there is light. And as we go inwards, our default mode is to encounter the first of three aspects of our inner world. That first aspect is mind, which exists and practices thoughts and feelings, emotions, ideas. And I include here memories, concepts, rationalizations, the world of stories and words. And we notice how intimately our thoughts and our feelings are connected. And everybody's very familiar with this, that ongoing dialogue and commentary of the mind. And there's nothing wrong with it. It serves a purpose in helping us to navigate the world out there. And it is the first encounter we have predominantly with the world out there. Our eyes see and our ears listen. And that makes up about 90% of the interaction we typically have with the world. So we listen to stories. We have strong emotions about ourselves and the world. And for the most part, we believe they help us to survive, and they often do. We also recognize that if we ground ourselves in our body in something other than the content of our thoughts and emotions, we notice something different. And so we bring our attention below or underneath or on the other side of our thoughts and emotions. And for a moment, we will bring our attention, the spotlight of our attention, which we're in control of. We bring our attention to the breath. And noticing that the breath is already breathing you. Allowing the gentle rhythm of the breath and the pauses between the inner and outer breath to carry you. And following the breath with your attention. And in particular, there's nothing to do or to analyze or to fix or to count or to deepen. Allowing the wisdom of the body to do what it knows how to do. Beyond anything you want. And recognizing that we're called human beings, that we're being present in this moment. And there is an awareness of being alive, an awareness of movement and energy. And that having dropped in below the level of the thinking mind to the second level, we arrive at the heart. And noticing whatever comes up for you, or whatever is significant or triggered in your heart. And welcoming whatever arrives. And the heart is pretty binary. And it holds a space that can at once be wounded and hurt and heavy, with memories of loss or grief. And as we welcome that side of the perhaps unwelcome or unwanted or unpleasant, we can embrace it and ask ourselves what's called for. What is that hurting heart calling for? What's most needed? What's vital? And one answer falls under the heading of healing, a bringing together of the brokenness. And the other half of the heart, or the other state that the heart often dwells in, is one of fullness and lightness and joy and connection and love. And all those lyrics of all those songs speak of love in one way or another. So the heart is both a place of deep wounding and it's intimately connected with the mind, emotions, and thinking. And when we experience wobbly thoughts, yucky thoughts, unpleasant thoughts, unwelcome thoughts and emotions, they land in our heart and they have an effect there. And as we pay attention to this inner world, we have a sense that there's more than we first thought. We feel it, we know it, because we've experienced it. And if you've experienced it, you're an expert already without any formal training. And it's a different kind of knowing. It's not conceptual or understood or reasoned. It's just known and felt and sensed in a deeper way. And while the mind may want things to be a certain way, when they don't always go that way, we experience some friction or uncomfortable feelings that are often difficult to label. But when we drop into the level of the heart, we get a sense of what's needed and what's called for. And what do I want and what do I need are two separate questions. And as we drop in below the level of the heart to the third level, we arrive at soul. Soul as that deepest part of our humanity. Soul as a verb. Soul as a way of being. Soul as an asset. Soul as something deep and undefinable. Soul is something that two healing disciplines have named themselves after, psychology and psychiatry, because psyche in Greek means soul. And soul can be used in the way that a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew can use it. That there's something divine within us that perhaps has always been with us, that perhaps every living being has in essence something eternal and unchanging. And soul can be used in that way too. And as we get to the level of soul, we notice that its qualities are more mysterious. They're actually even less illuminated. They're less visible, but very powerful and very real. The language of the soul is imagination and creativity and warmth. And it's a place of vitality, a place of birth. And so we have symbols and archetypes and figures. And its energies are generally life-giving. It is a source of life and energy that can bubble upwards, a place in which and from which we can renew our tanks when they feel empty. We can begin to fill our hearts with its assets of peace and beauty and joy and love and curiosity and forgiveness and compassion and connectivity. And we can let go and surrender so that we can meet whatever is dark, either in our own soul, those deeper feelings like guilt or shame or embarrassment or worthiness. Because each of those unpleasant feelings yearns, desires, are coming back to the fullness of life. So while the mind wants things and the heart needs healing, the soul desires to serve us and to serve something bigger than us, to bring back illumination and to light candles when it gets dark, to bring back to life those parts of us within us that need light. The parts of us that have been forgotten or neglected or even criticized or demonized. The parts of us we'd rather not deal with. The parts that the psychologist Carl Jung called shadow, which isn't just the unpleasant or nasty stuff. It's also the parts we might have neglected. So metaphorically, there is a vast terrain within us, a territory that we can explore, cultivate, nourish, refresh, when we set the intention and give ourselves permission to go inwards and embrace the darknesses that either lie within us or that continually bombard us from the outside world. And as we come up from the level of the soul and we bring its healing qualities to the heart, perhaps there's a sense of softening, a sense of healing, a sense of appreciation that the heart exists both as a place of joy and fullness and a place of woundedness. And with that, we bring both of those assets from the soul and the heart back to the thinking and emotional mind. And we notice a different quality of energy in the mind. Something feels different, softer, perhaps slower, perhaps less screaming, more genteel. And with all three of our inner assets, we can then move in the world in a different way. So taking another couple of breaths, consciously and a little more deeply, and when you're ready, if your eyes have been closed, noticing when your eyes decide to open themselves. Following on the meditation everything I have to say is elaboration or commentary. As you've noticed, I don't define words or I don't define terms, because each word, having been spoken, reaches into the silence, as T.S. Eliot said. And silence isn't empty, because it's actually full of answers if we listen carefully. The language of the mind and emotions is filled with words and decisions, and it has a certain tension and immediacy to it. The heart and the soul on the other side are more gentle, and they speak softly, and they use a different kind of language, as I mentioned, metaphor or poetry or prose, or yes, even prayer and meditation, music, art, creativity. And because of this, we have to tune in differently. And when we tune in, we're reminded again of the divided parts making up the whole. And the word whole and wholeness is related to the same root as the words heal, health, healthy, holy, and holiday. And these words have a certain energy that moves towards an integration, a bringing together, a fullness. And it's a process that takes time. And one of my favorite symbols is the yin-yang symbol from the East. It's constituted by two equal partners, and there's dark in the light and light in the dark, and the one doesn't dominate. There's a sense of balance and harmony. There's a sense of equality that each is represented. So when we think about fullness and richness and healing and mental well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, we need to recognize that the darkness is there as well. And it may seem that the darkness is empty, but it's not. And there's a wonderful book, and I referenced it on the website, that's called The Light Inside the Dark by a Zen teacher, John Tarrant. And that may seem at first contradictory to the thinking mind, but there must be light in the dark. And we know this to be true, that when it's dark, we light candles. Now we need to look for the candles, we need to set the intention, we might need to ask for help, but the candles are there. And my favorite quote is, again, from Carl Jung, that the sole purpose of human existence, as best as we can discern, is to light a candle in the darkness of mere being. As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to light a candle in the darkness of mere being. And that's beautiful. So we recognize that we can lament, and everyone will agree with us about darkness, pain, unwanted emotions, unwelcome states within us, illness, death, loss, grief, hurt, confusion, or even rage or violence or other shameful feelings. We acknowledge them, and then the question is, what's my relationship to it? Because the thinking mind is only one way of engaging those dark parts of ourselves or the world out there. And if we've recognized, as we did in the meditation, that those events filter to all three levels of our being, our heart, our mind, and our soul, we can then engage consciously all three levels to meet our deepest desires and our needs. And once we do that, we can then ask ourselves, what do I do? Sometimes the mind will rush to wanting to do something before it knows what it is it needs to do. And so we need to pause so that the answer to the question, what's called for and what do I do, in fact has a richer, deeper, more appropriate, coherent, integrated and balanced response. The story is told of someone who walks down the street one night and he sees someone on their hands and knees looking for something in the dark. And he walks up to the stranger and he says, what are you doing on your knees? And the person says, I'm looking for my car keys, I dropped them. And the standing person says, well, how about moving over here because there's a cone of light from the street lamp and you're more likely to find your keys. He said, well, if it were that easy, I would have found them already. So I'm actually looking here in the dark where I can't quite see yet. And that's an important story because our tendency is to do the obvious. And the obvious is sometimes a shortcut. But the obviously easy shortcut doesn't always provide us with the sort of answer we might be looking for. As a therapist, and many people, of course, know about cognitive therapy, where we change our thoughts to change our feelings. And to some degree that does help. I'm not in any way criticizing the nature of mind for its reliance on thoughts and feelings, emotions, concepts, ideas, and the wonderful ways in which we can plan our activities. It's just that it's insufficient. Because the thinking mind, with all its judgments and criticisms, has not helped us solve the bigger questions of what it means to be human. And the word human comes from the word humus, as in a rich soil, something that is life-giving. So our humanity, we must remember, must be nurtured like a good soil. And I'm reminded also of the story of the potato farmer who was asked, how do you grow potatoes? And she responded, well, I don't actually grow potatoes. And the person said, what do you mean? I see these acres and acres of potatoes in your field. And she responded, I create the conditions in which the potatoes grow. And if we believe that things happen in our lives because of what we do, which to some degree it does, then we need to create the conditions inside in which our values, our meaning, what gives us purpose and enjoyment and satisfaction and wellness and fullness and a sense of flourishing, and however you define that, whatever that means to you, if that is the goal, then the quest is to make sure that we have everything we need on that journey. A journey that moves towards fullness and wholeness and health. And under those circumstances, the word balance becomes a verb, because every moment mindfully we are balancing our inner and outer worlds. we are balancing our wants and our needs and our desires. We are balancing the calling of the world. And mindfulness is this capacity to be fully present for whatever is there, whether it's unpleasant or pleasant or neutral. To be able to hold a welcoming space for the light and the dark. Mindfulness is intentional and it's on purpose and it's available every moment. And it has a wide aperture in which we can at once sense simultaneously that we are living in a world that seems to be out there, and there's this other half of the world, our inner world, our inner life, our interior space, our being. And in this way we have a greater capacity for truly appreciating what it means to be human, to live our lives in accord with everything that's important to us, most valuable to us. That we come to align our priorities in a way that Mahatma Gandhi said, happiness is when what you think, what you feel, and what you do are in alignment. So this interior space, this embrace sing, this practice sing, this sense of being, is a way of being that helps us to perhaps improve the quality of our doing. So we need to pay attention to how are we being while we are doing our doing. We need to understand what constitutes our so-called inner world. What gets us out of bed every morning, what's worthwhile doing. And coming to a sense of acceptance and connecting with our inner life, our inner purpose, and finding joy and gratitude. And letting go. And forgiving ourselves and others. And wrapping it all up in a beautiful warm blanket of compassion, a way of being with our suffering and our darkness that doesn't weigh us down, that doesn't weigh us down. And then we can celebrate life. And I take this opportunity to mention that I sit on the board and I actively work with a not-for-profit organization, the Canadian Institute of Natural and Integrative Medicine, CINIM. And we have an online programming and app called the Breathing Room that incorporates these practices, these ways of being, contemplative practice, and our research has shown that these actually support well-being beyond a reduction of symptoms, that people feel less anxious, depressed, burnt out, stressed, but more than that, they have a sense of being alive and flourishing, a sense of freedom and power and control that they never had before. And perhaps in times like these, a sense of hope that somehow there's a way of doing what we do that actually gives us a greater sense of being in the world in a way that's going to make it better for ourselves and for the people around us and for the world and the planet at large. So I thank you for your attention and for watching this evening's presentation. Thank you.